I am a sucker for old films. They provide a sense of haunting comfort to me. A world, a set of people, and a surrounding from an inaccessible era that leaves me with nostalgia for a period of time that I never lived in to begin with. The haunting side of it comes from the realization that I'm basically witnessing the lives of dead people. Individuals who not only have passed away, but with them took away their talent of encapsulating and alluring acting. In those days, acting alone was the selling point of anything that the audience might pay to watch in a cinema theater. Captivating stories and plausible practical effects had their importance, but not as much as the star power of a proclaimed actor. The gravitating prowess of an easily recognizable face of a person of such stature is what ultimately sold the tickets. Now, those days are gone, and the whole system has become more complex, which is better for the most parts. However, the comfort comes back again. The simple yet ambitious nature of titles from those years has an effect on me that most modern titles fail to achieve. I know, all of this sounds like another one of those annoying people who think that everything peaked in the past, which isn't the case here. No matter which genre is taken into consideration, majority of my favorites from them feature a huge deal of modern titles. The point being, older films offer a value that can't be technically found in what we are handed with nowadays. They act as a time capsule that holds in information about how life functioned in those days. That's what films can be, a visual representation of a place, culture, or people that, if done efficiently, can allow the viewers to learn from them. An endless supply of different outlooks and perspectives about us human beings from different sectors of the world and how it unites us. And the titles that will be focused in here accomplish that said task in a humane manner. As of now, these sort of projects excite me in a fashion that sci-fi and fantasy used to when I was young. The older I grow, the more I appreciate their worth and what they were willing to attain with this artistic medium. And the director that I'm choosing to prioritize in here perfectly fits that bill. His work has always been close to who I am as a person, but was unaware of the significance that it held and how ahead of its time it was in comparison to the place where it all occurred. Satyajit Ray can easily be considered as one of the most emotionally powerful directors from India. His worldwide reach and acclaim generally separates him from his contemporaries and who came after him. The mark he left on this field can't be matched by a lot of people. The ease with which he displayed raw human emotions and their issues is unrivaled. That too about a group of people and a place that the outside world knows so little about. A word that is usually associated with his films is universality. As an insider, it's kinda tough to comprehend that. The subtle nuances, the language barrier that isn't translated well with the subtitles, and it being drenched in the Bengali culture aren't going to be easily evaluated by outsiders. However, such was the brilliance of his directing style. He chose to focus on the simpler side of things, as they were more universal in nature, making them easier to be resonated by everyone, with an innate understanding of portraying tragic stories with conclusion that hit even harder, featuring characters who you can't but feel bad for them no matter what decision they take or what comes of it. The humanity in his work is what makes it boundless. He found this simplicity in that ever-perplexing and complex notion of our species, accompanied by the fluidity in his direction and cinematography that was way ahead of his time, with a knack for ambitious introductory sequences and a love for long segmented takes, both of which are much appreciated facets by me. His early films, particularly the Apu trilogy, is widely recognized as the finest in his entire filmography, focusing on the rural and poverty-stricken families, how they conduct their life, and their day-to-day struggles, centered around the journey of an individual from boyhood to manhood, and all the hurdles that came along the way. Although they have their importance in their own ways, and I can delve a bit deeper into them, as you can judge from the title of this video, I have something else in my mind. A subject matter which has been made apparent, however, not in a detailed fashion. Women have always played a huge role in most of his proclaimed pieces. Even though the trilogy is primarily based around the set of events that Apurvo goes through, the women in his life are equally vital to the overarching story. From Durga's austere living condition and being suppressed by the traditional role that she has to abide by, where not only her brother and his needs are prioritized over her, she is also supposed or expected to aid him, but their mother too. To Sarbojoya, an orthodox Bengali married woman who had to sacrifice her dreams and neglect her needs for the betterment of their family, and was the one who acted in an emotionally mature manner while enduring all the hardships and deaths the family went through. And then there is Aparna, who came into the life of Apurvo through a bizarre arranged marriage, who never herself questioned it or was allowed to do so, and always looked content with her life, no matter how much it was dictated by her parents first and then her husband. Still, the films that he released in early 1960s are far better examples of the concept that I want to discuss, where we can witness the early signs of feminism in Indian cinema. And these triplets of titles can be the prime specimen for it. Going in a chronological order, we're going to begin this with a film that came out in the year 1960, titled Devi, which translates to Goddess, based around the short story written by Prabodh Kumar Mukhopadhyay. The film is mainly concentrated around Doyamoi, an underage girl who is married to Uma Prasad, inhabiting in a village where they live in a mansion along with his religious father, older brother, and his wife. As it is common in most Indian family structure, the youngest woman or wife is assigned with the most of the household chores. However, in here, it is almost unbelievable the amount of work she does on the daily. Her father-in-law is completely reliant on her to continue the religious practices that he believes in, a task that is usually done by a woman. And then there is her nephew, who adores and complies to what she says more than his own mother, and even seems more attentive to the needs of the family than the servants, and yet manages to find a balance amongst all this and stay healthy. In a way, she resembles a goddess with multiple caring hands tending everyone. That's how most married women are treated like by their families. They are worshipped and are meant to be protected at all cost for bringing peace and stability to their lives. Basically, another means of being perceived as a possession, adorned in jewels and locked inside till death. But in here, it is taken to the next level when her father-in-law dreams of her being the reincarnation of the goddess Kali and starts to believe in it. So does his oldest son and the rest of the men in the village, which drastically changes her lifestyle. In a place and time where women already had almost untraceable ounce of freedom, situations like these further diminish any hope of ever coming close to being in charge of their own life in any way or form. False miracles further solidifies the claims of her being an actual avatar of Kali. The delusion is continued no matter how many times the outside forces try to stop it. And Uma Prasad being away to continue his studies plays a tremendous role in its advancement. His absence allows it to develop and prosper, as she alone can't conjure enough courage to personally go against it. The direct or indirect reliance of a married woman on a man in an Indian household at its best. Her age is a hefty factor behind it, but more so the culture surrounding it. The bride isn't supposed to confront or defy the words of men older than her. Thus, most of her replies are silent or subdued in nature, which is also apparent with her lowered mannerisms, which in a way they are required to do so in the presence of a man, all while being the focal character. And this is deliberately done by Satyajit Ray to display how restraining it can get for them under regular context, let alone in what we are witnessing here. As even if she doesn't believe in it or wishes for that special reception, she can't disobey it. Even though she is a goddess, she is almost helpless and has no say as to what happens to her other than being stuck in that stationary stature to be looked upon by those men. A blind faith that pushes a young girl into a life full of loneliness, isolation, and superstitions, which leads to the death of a child, breakup of a marriage, chaos in a family, and a psychological broken girl who is forced to lose everything that she once cherished with her dear life. This next title brings us to an urban setting. Mahanagar, which translates to big city, came out in 1963, which is another film that is adapted from a short story written by a Bengali writer, this time by Narendranath Mitra. The film is set in 1950s Kolkata, pivoted around a middle-class family and the dynamics between them, consisting of her protagonist Arathi, her husband and their son, and along with them lives his young sister and his traditionalist parents. The deep embedded conformist ideology is evident from the early sequences, from Subrato jokingly questioning the purpose behind Bani attending school, to an intelligent woman like Arathi being a mere housewife rather than working, who is relegated to stay inside and take care of her father-in-law. And when inquires about her getting a job, she is handed with laughable and sexist excuses, which by all means shouldn't affect or hamper her decision or desire to earn for the family. And it gets even worse. From him cutely narrating a phrase about how women are ought to stay at home and never wander off, to her gleeful agreement. The result of being fed with a damaging mentality since childhood that can even sway to educated people into believing them. A system that is still rampant in most Indian families. It isn't as if women can't work outside the confinement of their house. But what is the need of it? Why allow a woman to work when the men can double their hours to make up for it? It's not like women have never worked in our history. However, it's only when it was economically necessary. For centuries, women from lower castes or class have been working in unfavorable conditions for the sake of their family's survival. And that's where the issue lies. Why would our women need to get a job when there are men available in the family who can do that? It's about their dignity and the loss of prestige that supposedly comes from it. Aruthi never wanted to work for personal gain, but only to help her hardworking husband and become financially responsible for the family. Still, she's hesitant to go through with this selfless action. How will the family function? And is it worth getting a job when it hurts so many people? Her breaking various societal norms is received with mixed response. The women in the family are far more grateful and appreciative for what she's accomplishing, especially Bani, who sees her as a role model, an independent woman with so much potential. The men, on the other hand, are quite bitter about it. Her loving and supportive husband turns into a jealous-filled individual who again bombards her with meaningless excuses. And his conventional father is far too old to change his views about her being proactive in life. Eventually, they get resolved after the family goes through some unfortunate incidents. Subrato losing his job in a surprising turn of events by not being aware of the downfall of the bank reflects interestingly to the manner in which Aruthi resigns from her. Standing against the face of injustice is a great indication of the character she was. And most of the women were, in the film, were generally more giving in nature and willing to sacrifice their personal aspirations when needed. whereas the men are beseeching in nature and resort to destructive and impulsive behavior when the circumstances become dire. This is a story that gets way too real at moments and deserves far more respect for its forward thinking and timeless social commentary. The final pick for this leads us to his 1964 masterpiece and personal favorite, Charulata, which translates to Lonely Wife, based on the novel Nostonir, written by the mammoth in the Bengali culture, Rabindranath Tagore, who is responsible for various perennial artistic works. The film revolves around Charulata, played by the marvelous Madhavi Mukherjee, set in Kolkata when it was under the British rule, with two other core characters being her husband Bhupati and his young cousin Amal. Everything that is wonderful about this film is shown without being said in the beginning with this particular scene. Her loneliness, peeking at the ever so close but ungraspable outside world, and the emotional detachment from her husband. The iconic set of binoculars helping her to come close and experience those distant facets of her life. A person with abundant amount of time, which allows her to do almost anything and yet nothing at the same time. Something that she has came terms to.
তোমার বড় একা লাগে না চারু?
ও আমার অভ্যেস হয়ে গেছে।
A work-driven and absent husband, a mansion full of servants servicing at all times, and an upper-class lifestyle is bound to massively alter the living situation of a person inhabiting under those conditions. Her secured and mundane surrounding parallels millions of Indian housewives who willingly confine themselves for their entire life, while getting response from the men which have envious undertones or are ridiculed for the activities they get up to, which is the peak of irony as the structure was established and is widely practiced by those same men, where women had no option other than incorporating it in their lives, as retaliation would have been deeply disrupting. Men are enticed by the ease of how women get to reside in a society. However, the overall allure of it fades away really quickly once they realize the limiting side of it that only leads to nothingness. A feeling women in similar position to Charulata have to live through, whose divide with her husband can be seen in multitude of levels. Bhupati hopes that she finds some sort of delight in the normalcy in her life. Hence, he invites her older brother and his wife to accompany her, which doesn't work out in the way he hoped for. The eagerness that exudes from her demeanor wasn't going to be satisfied with all those womanly pastimes. And the difference can be spotted even in the form or medium of expression both of them favored. Bhupati is involved in social and political discourse, doing everything within his means for the betterment of the country's citizens, whereas Charulata looks for the meaning of her existence in literary and creative outlets, enlightening herself by reading books and various other stories, whose development is soared to unthinkable heights and leads to unimaginable complications when Amal arrives like a storm in their lives, providing the much needed intellectual compassion to her. Satyajit Ray subtly exhibited all the brushed aside issues of women in that rapidly changing Indian society that hasn't faded away, and didn't belittle the ones who were still left behind, as they weren't in charge of their own lives and were regulated with every moving step, but issued them with ample duration of time and much needed respect to assuredly unveil all their lovely facets along with all the faults and fallacies. Not perfect by any means, but simply enough by being themselves, which is all they ever hoped for. A film that is hoisted by the brilliant camera work by Subrata Mitra to produce visually rich sequences, the extensive research by Satyajit Ray to nail down the aesthetic of that era, which provided us with those lush set and costume design and moments that celebrate various classics in the Bengali culture.
আমি চিনি গো চিনি তোমারে ও গো বিদেশিনী আমি চিনি গো চিনি তোমারে ও গো বিদেশিনী তুমি থাকো সিন্ধু পারে তুমি থাকো সিন্ধু পারে ও গো বিদেশিনী ও গো বিদেশিনী
There were two more titles that were meant to be discussed in here. However, they were left out as they didn't meet my requirements. Those being, if they were released in the 1960s and available in good quality to be used in here. One of the films that missed out was Teen Konya, which I regret not using, as it would have been perfect, but the resolution of the video was way too low. And the other being Ghore Baire, which would be better suited for a different topic that I'm planning to work on in the future. However, the chosen trio and much of his works featuring women have one strong correlating theme. All of the married women had really loving and understanding husbands who were distant towards them in one way or other. Either it's the distance that separates them, or there is an emotional barrier between them. And he also had a tendency of demonstrating female characters whom he preferred with grace and dignity. Well, more than it seems they get nowadays. Let's hope they at least get paid well. He commented on various women-related concerns without going overboard with it. There was a delicate feel to his way of preparing and parceling those points to us that felt natural and poetic. A man who was submerged in the culture that he dearly loved. Hence, his film lived and breathed everything about Bengal. The importance of scenes of people eating, and the sweet role reversals, the distinctiveness in the motherly manners when her child goes away, and the omnipresent ghazals and folk music or poems playing in the background. Well, with that being said, there is a divide separating him and the culture he loved so much, which can be explored in the scene from Charulata.
ভেবে দেখো ব্রাদার, চারটিখানি কথা নয়, বিলেত।
The land of Shakespeare.
শুধু শেক্সপিয়ার কেন, বাক, ম্যাকলে, গ্ল্যাডস্টোন। পার্লামেন্টে গিয়ে বক্তৃতা শুনবে আমল, নিজে বসে বক্তৃতা শুনে আসবে। আমি যা পারিনি। ওহ ব্রাদার, রাজি?
সুজলাং সুফলাং মলয়জ শীতলাং শস্য শ্যামলাং। দাদা
কি?
নো
সে কি? তাহলে
আমার বাংলাদেশ বেঁচে থাকুক। গুড নাইট।
আরে আরে
হরে মুরারে।
The pride and satisfaction that comes from being accepted and appreciated around your own people is bar none. But the films of Satyajit Ray that are popular worldwide isn't likewise to his most successful films in here. A title that I distinctively remember watching when I was young, mainly for its remarkable name, is Gupigain Bagabain, which is rarely mentioned outside of Bengali families, all while being his most commercially well-performing film. And I can't even show scenes from it as they aren't easily accessible in favorable condition. And isn't that just painfully annoying? Much like the scene in Charulata, the fame of his work is primarily fixated around outsiders or a group of people who think knowing English is a sign of intelligence and act far more foreign to the individuals upon whom he based most of his proclaimed projects. were success stories that we saw in the Apu trilogy of rural kids persevering against all adversities to go and settle in bigger cities are treated with prejudiced and classist comments, made fun for what they can't change. His work is celebrated in a larger scale by the ones who don't even know the accurate name of his beloved city, Kolkata. It is on par with all those white people calling Native Americans Indians. Blatant ignorance sprouting from misinformation that has been going on for far too long. The same people who tangled the director and his script that would later bear resemblance to Spielberg's E.T. But it isn't the first time a brown person was fucked over by white people. However, what hurts more is that they are the ones who funded to restore and reserve his works, and not us.